Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about the life of J.K. Rowling. Not just the famous author. Not just the woman who created Harry Potter. But the young girl who once sat quietly in her room, filling notebooks with stories no one else could see. If you enjoy this content, subscribing to English to Inspire will help more people find these conversations. Let's go back to the beginning. Imagine a small house in England in the 1970s. A quiet afternoon. A little girl sits on the floor with a pen in her hand. That girl is Joanne Rowling. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She was just a shy child with a very active imagination. When she was about 6 years old, she wrote her first story. It was about a rabbit. A rabbit who caught the measles and was visited by friends. Simple, right? But for her, it felt magical. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever created something small that made you feel proud? That feeling stayed with her. She loved reading. Books were not just paper and ink. They were doors. When she opened a book, she traveled somewhere else. Sometimes she felt lonely. Sometimes she felt different from other kids. But inside stories, she felt strong. She felt brave. She felt seen. Her parents weren't rich. They lived a normal life. Her father worked as an aircraft engineer. Her mother was a science technician. There wasn't anything glamorous about her childhood. No red carpets. No interviews. Just school, homework, and dreams. At school, she was a good student, but not perfect. She wasn't the loudest in class. She wasn't the most popular. But she paid attention. She observed people. The strict teacher. The funny classmate. The quiet kid in the back. Later, many of these personalities would appear in her books. Real life became material for magic. There's a story she once shared about riding on a train when she was 25. But even before that train ride, the idea of magic was already living inside her. As a child, she imagined secret worlds. She imagined hidden powers. She imagined children who discovered they were special. Does that sound familiar? Her mother became very sick when Joanne was still young. She had multiple sclerosis, a serious illness that affects the body slowly. It was hard for the family. The house felt heavier. Conversations felt softer. Joanne didn't always know how to talk about her feelings. So she wrote. Writing became her safe place. Imagine being a teenager who feels confused and scared about a parent's illness. Where do you put that pain? Some people shout. Some people hide. She wrote stories. In those stories, there was always hope. Even in dark moments, there was light somewhere. After school, she went to university. She studied French and classics. She liked languages. She liked how words could build worlds. During this time, she kept writing small ideas. Not a big book yet. Just pieces. Scenes. Names. Fragments of conversations. Have you ever had an idea that stayed in your mind for years? Something quiet but persistent? That's how it was for her. The dream of becoming a writer didn't disappear. It waited patiently. Life after university wasn't simple. She worked normal jobs. She moved to different cities. She tried to be practical. But inside, the storyteller was still awake. It's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes we try to be realistic, but our dreams refuse to sleep. And then came that famous train ride from Manchester to London. The train was delayed. She had no pen. No paper. Just her thoughts. And suddenly, a boy appeared in her mind. A skinny boy with messy black hair. A boy who didn't know he was a wizard. She watched him in her imagination for hours. She saw the school. The castle. The teachers. The friends. By the time the train arrived, she knew something important had happened. But at that moment, she was still just Joanne. No one else knew about this boy. No one knew that this idea would change her life. And that's where things start to become more complicated, because having an idea is one thing, but turning it into reality is something very different. After that train ride, the idea wouldn't leave her alone. You know that feeling when something keeps knocking inside your head? That was Harry. She started to build his world slowly. Not in a big office. Not with a team. Just her, a pen, and many sheets of paper. At that time, her life was not stable. She moved to Portugal to teach English. Imagine her there. A new country. A different language around her. Small streets. Old buildings. She taught during the day, and at night she wrote. The story grew little by little. In Portugal, she met a journalist. They fell in love quickly. It felt intense. Fast. Romantic. Sometimes when we're young, everything feels bigger, right? They got married. Soon, she became pregnant. In 1993, her daughter was born. A tiny baby girl in her arms. But the marriage was not happy. There were fights. There was tension. The home didn't feel safe. She has spoken about feeling afraid. Imagine trying to write a magical story while your real life feels unstable. That contrast was painful. One night, after things became too difficult, she made a hard decision. She left. She took her baby and returned to the UK. She moved to Edinburgh, in Scotland. She didn't have much money. She didn't have a clear plan. She had a suitcase, a child, and a manuscript. Picture her in a small apartment. Cold walls. Bills on the table. A crying baby in the next room. She depended on government support. She has said she felt like a failure at that time. Divorced. Unemployed. Living on benefits. That word failure felt heavy. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, this is not what I planned? She felt that deeply. She also struggled with depression. That deep sadness that makes everything slow and gray. She has described it as a cold presence. Something that takes your energy. In those moments, even simple tasks feel hard. But here's something important. She kept writing. Every day, she put her daughter in a stroller and walked to a cafe. One of them was called Nicholson's Cafe. The air smelled like coffee and warm bread. The windows were sometimes foggy from the cold outside. She would sit at a small table. Her baby slept beside her. And she wrote. Think about that scene. No laptop. No luxury. Just paper and determination. When the baby slept, she wrote quickly. When the baby cried, she stopped. Then she continued again. Slow progress is still progress. Sometimes she felt embarrassed. People around her had careers. They wore suits. They looked confident. She felt small. But inside her mind, there was a castle. There were moving staircases. There were teachers and ghosts in secret rooms. One day, while writing about dark creatures that suck happiness from people, she realized something. The dementors in her story were like her depression. They took away joy. They made everything feel empty. Writing about them helped her understand her own pain. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes our art reflects our struggles. Without planning it, she turned her sadness into something powerful on the page. Money was tight. Very tight. She had to choose carefully what to buy. She has said that she was as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. That's a strong sentence. It shows how serious things were. But she also said something else. She felt free in a strange way. She had nothing left to lose. When you have nothing to protect, sometimes you become brave. She finished the first manuscript of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in 1995. It took years. Years of slow writing. Years of doubt. Years of cold mornings and cheap coffee. Now imagine holding that thick stack of paper in your hands. After all that struggle, the story was complete. She could see it. Touch it. But finishing a book is not the same as publishing it. Because now came a new challenge. She had to send her story to publishers. She had to ask strangers to believe in her dream. And that's when the rejections began. So there she was, sitting at her small table again, but this time with a finished manuscript. Hundreds of pages. Years of her life. She put the pages into an envelope. She wrote the address of a publisher. She walked to the post office. Her heart was beating fast. Have you ever sent something important and then waited for an answer? That waiting can feel endless. The first reply came back. It was a no. A simple rejection letter. Polite. Short. Cold. They weren't interested. She opened the envelope, read the words, and felt that small sting in her chest. But she told herself, it's only one. So she sent it again. Another publisher. Another envelope. Another walk to the mailbox. More waiting. Then another no. This happened again and again. 12 times. Imagine that. 12 different publishers said no to Harry Potter. 12 times someone looked at her story and decided it wasn't good enough. Or maybe it wouldn't sell. Or maybe children wouldn't read such a long book. Each rejection could have been the end. She was already struggling with money. She was already tired. It would have been easy to say, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Have you ever felt that voice in your head? The one that says, stop trying. It's too hard. She heard that voice too. But she didn't stop. Instead, she kept improving her letters. She researched publishers. She tried to understand the market. This word market means the business world, the place where books are bought and sold. She learned that children's books were often shorter. So her long story was risky. Finally, her manuscript arrived at a small publishing house in London called Bloomsbury Publishing. It wasn't the biggest company. It wasn't the most famous. But sometimes, small doors open big futures. There's a beautiful detail in this story. The chairman of Bloomsbury took the manuscript home. His 8-year-old daughter started reading it. After the first chapter, she asked for more. She wanted to know what happened next. Think about that moment. A little girl sitting on her bed, turning pages, eyes wide with curiosity. That simple reaction changed everything. The publisher decided to take a chance. In 1996, they offered her a small contract. The advance payment was about £1,500. Not a fortune. Just enough to breathe a little easier. She was told to get a day job because children's books didn't usually make much money. Can you imagine hearing that? Don't expect too much. But she signed the contract anyway. It was her first yes. There was one more detail. The publisher suggested she use initials instead of her full name. They thought boys might not want to read a book written by a woman. So Joanne Rowling became J.K. Rowling. The K doesn't stand for a real middle name. She chose it from her grandmother's name, Kathleen. Sometimes the world asks you to change a little. The question is, do you lose yourself in that change? She didn't. The name changed. The story didn't. In 1997, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published in the UK. The first print run was only 500 copies. That's very small. About 300 went to libraries. Today, those first editions are worth a lot of money. But at that time, it was just a quiet beginning. She held the printed book in her hands for the first time. Imagine that feeling. The cover. The smell of fresh paper. Her name on the front. After years of doubt, it was real. The book started to receive good reviews. Children loved it. Teachers recommended it. Word spread slowly. Then a big American publisher, Scholastic Corporation, bought the US rights for a much larger amount of money. Suddenly, doors were opening faster. But success didn't explode overnight. It grew step by step. Book signings. Small events. Interviews. She was still a single mother, still careful with money, but now there was hope in the air. And as more children discovered Harry, something surprising began to happen. The story wasn't just entertaining them. It was changing how they felt about reading. And that's when the magic truly started to spread beyond her small cafe table. As the books reached more hands, something unusual began to happen. Children who didn't like reading were suddenly waiting in line at bookstores. Parents told stories about sons who stayed up late with a flashlight under the blanket. Teachers said their classrooms felt different. There was excitement in the air. Imagine a small bookstore in London in 1998. A few kids gather near a display table. They whisper about spells and secret doors. They argue about their favorite characters. For many of them, this was the first time a book felt alive. Not like homework. Not like a task. But like an adventure. When Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets came out, the excitement grew. Then came Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Each new story felt darker and deeper. The characters were growing up. And so were the readers. J.K. Rowling was still adjusting to this new life. One day she was writing alone in cafes. The next day she was signing hundreds of books. Picture her sitting at a long table, stacks of books beside her, children standing in line with bright eyes. Some were shy. Some were shaking with excitement. They told her how much Harry meant to them. Have you ever created something that touched someone else's heart? It's powerful. It's also a little scary. Then something even bigger happened. Hollywood called. The film rights were sold, and soon the world heard that Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone would become a movie. Imagine hearing that news. Your private world, the one that lived only in your head, would now appear on giant screens. When she visited the film set for the first time, she saw Hogwarts built in wood and stone. She saw actors dressed as wizards. She heard the director say action. It must have felt unreal. Like walking inside a dream you once had on a delayed train. But success at that level brings pressure. Journalists asked questions every day. Cameras followed her. People wanted more books, faster. Expectations were high. Very high. She has said that fame felt strange. One day, she could walk quietly in the street. The next, people recognized her everywhere. Think about that change. Would you enjoy it? Or would it feel overwhelming? At the same time, she was raising her daughter. She tried to protect her child from the noise of the media. She wanted her to have a normal life. So even while her bank account was growing, she kept certain routines simple. School runs. Family dinners. Private time. When Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was released, midnight launch parties became common. Bookstores opened at 12 a.m. Kids wore wizard hats. Some counted down the seconds. It looked more like a concert than a book release. Pause and think about that. A children's book creating that kind of energy. It was rare. It was special. But with every new book, the story grew heavier. Characters faced loss. They faced fear. J.K. Rowling wasn't afraid to show pain. Maybe because she knew pain in real life. Remember her mother's illness? Her mother died before the first Harry Potter book was published. She never saw her daughter's success. That loss stayed inside the story. The theme of losing parents. The deep sadness Harry feels. It wasn't just fiction. It was personal. Have you noticed how real emotions make stories stronger? When writers put true feelings on the page, readers feel it too. By the time Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix arrived, the series had become a global event. Different languages, different countries, millions of copies. And yet, inside all this noise, she still had to sit alone and write the next sentence. Fame doesn't write the book for you. Money doesn't solve writer's block. She still faced blank pages. She still doubted herself sometimes. Success did not remove effort. It only changed the scale. And as the world waited for the final chapters of Harry's journey, the pressure became even stronger, because now it wasn't just about telling a story. It was about finishing something that had shaped an entire generation. By the time she started writing the final books, the world was watching closely. Children who once needed help tying their shoes were now teenagers. They had grown up with Harry. And they wanted answers. They wanted to know who would live, who would die, how it would all end. Imagine sitting at your desk, knowing millions of people are waiting for your next sentence. That kind of pressure can freeze you. But she returned to something simple. She closed the door. She sat down. She wrote. When Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released, bookstores again opened at midnight. Some readers dressed as their favorite characters. Others stood in line for hours. Parents brought blankets and snacks. It felt like a celebration. But inside the book, the tone was darker. There was loss. There was betrayal. Readers cried. Some even felt angry. Why did she do that? They asked. That reaction shows something important. When people feel strong emotions about a story, it means they care deeply. She once said she always knew how the series would end. She had written the last chapter years earlier and kept it safe. Think about that. In the middle of all the noise, she held the ending quietly in her mind. Writing the final book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, was emotional for her. She has described crying while finishing certain scenes. Imagine her alone in a room, typing, tears in her eyes, knowing she was saying goodbye to characters who had lived with her for so long. Have you ever finished a long project and felt both proud and sad? That mix of emotions can be heavy. When the last book was released, the numbers were unbelievable. Millions of copies sold in the first day. Around the world, people stayed awake all night reading. Some refused to answer the phone until they finished. It was like a shared global moment. The final movie, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, brought the story to the big screen one last time. Fans filled theaters. Some cried openly during the ending. A fictional world had become part of real lives. During all this, her financial situation changed completely. She went from living on government support to becoming one of the wealthiest authors in the world. That's a dramatic change. But money did not erase her past. She often spoke openly about her earlier struggles. Here's something powerful she once said: rock bottom became the solid foundation on which she rebuilt her life. Think about that sentence. Rock bottom means the lowest point. For her, losing almost everything gave her clarity. It forced her to focus on what truly mattered. She has shared that fear of failure used to control her. But once she experienced real failure, it wasn't as terrifying anymore. It was painful, yes, but survivable. Have you ever feared something so much, and then later realized you could handle it? Sometimes the fear is bigger than the reality. After finishing Harry Potter, many people wondered, what will she do now? How do you move forward after creating something so huge? That question can feel intimidating. Instead of rushing, she took time. She explored new ideas. She allowed herself to be more than one story. And this next phase of her life shows that success is not just about reaching the top. It's about what you choose to do once you're there. After the last Harry Potter book, the world expected her to repeat the same magic. People wondered if she could ever create something as big again. That kind of expectation can feel heavy. Imagine finishing a marathon and, instead of resting, everyone asks you to run another one immediately. She decided to surprise people. In 2012, she published a new novel called The Casual Vacancy. It was very different from Harry Potter. It was for adults. There were no wizards. No spells. Just real people in a small English town dealing with politics, secrets, and personal problems. Some readers were shocked. They expected magic. Instead, they found ordinary life. The book received mixed reactions. Some critics liked it. Some didn't. Sales were strong, but the emotional connection was different. Have you ever tried something new and felt nervous about how people would react? She knew not everyone would follow her into this new world. But she wrote it anyway. Then she did something even more interesting. She started writing crime novels under a different name, Robert Galbraith. She wanted to know if her writing could stand alone without the power of her famous name. The first book, The Cuckoo's Calling, was published quietly. There was no big announcement. No red carpet. Reviews were modest but positive. Sales were small. Imagine her reading those reviews in secret, knowing no one realized who she was. It must have felt strangely peaceful. Just a writer again. No huge expectations. But the secret didn't last long. A journalist discovered that Robert Galbraith was actually J.K. Rowling. The news spread quickly. Sales jumped overnight. Some people praised her bravery. Others criticized the secret. Still, the series continued. More books about the detective Cormoran strike were released. She built another world, slower this time. More grounded. More realistic. At the same time, she returned to the wizarding world in a new way. In 2016, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them appeared in cinemas. It was based on a small book she had once written for charity. Now it became a film series with new characters and new adventures. She was no longer just the author of books. She was involved in screenwriting too. That's a different skill. Writing for film means thinking about images, movement, dialogue spoken aloud. It's another challenge. Think about this. After reaching enormous success, she could have stopped. She could have lived quietly and comfortably. But she kept working. She kept creating. Why? Maybe because writing was never just about money or fame. It was how she understood the world. But as her influence grew, so did public attention on her personal opinions. And this part of her journey became more complicated, because being famous means people listen closely to what you say, and sometimes they strongly disagree. As her fame grew, her words carried more weight. When you are known around the world, even a short message can travel fast. In recent years, J.K. Rowling shared opinions about gender identity that created strong reactions. Some people agreed with her. Many strongly disagreed. The discussion became loud. Very loud. Imagine opening your phone and seeing thousands of messages about you. Some supportive. Some angry. Some hurt. It's not a simple situation. For many fans, Harry Potter was a story about acceptance and belonging. So when controversy appeared, emotions were intense. Actors from the Harry Potter films also spoke publicly. Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry, shared his support for transgender people. Emma Watson, who played Hermione, also expressed her views. The media quickly turned this into a dramatic story, author versus actors. But real life is usually more complex than headlines. Have you ever disagreed with someone you respect? It can feel confusing. You may still value the past, but struggle with the present. Rowling said she was speaking from personal belief and concern. Critics said her words caused harm. Supporters said she had the right to her opinion. The debate moved beyond books. It became part of a larger global conversation about identity and rights. For her, this period meant facing public criticism on a scale she had never experienced before. She received praise and also strong attacks. Social media can be a harsh place. Messages come fast. Emotions run high. It's easy for conversations to become battles. Think about being in the center of that storm. How would you react? Would you stay silent? Would you defend yourself? She chose to write long essays explaining her position. She did interviews. She stood firm. This situation shows something important about fame. When you become a symbol for many people, your personal voice can affect others deeply. Sometimes in ways you didn't expect. At the same time, many readers continue to love the Harry Potter books. For them, the story still brings comfort. It still represents friendship, courage, and standing up to fear. Some fans separate the art from the artist. That means they continue to enjoy the books while disagreeing with the author's views. It's not always easy to hold two ideas at once. To admire someone's work and question their opinions. But real life often asks us to do exactly that. Through all of this, Rowling kept writing. The strike novels continued. Public discussions continued too. The world didn't become quiet again. But neither did she disappear. Here's something worth thinking about. Success doesn't protect you from criticism. It doesn't make life simple. In fact, it can make life more complicated. The higher you rise, the more visible you become. Have you noticed that people with strong voices often face strong reactions? That's part of public life. Beyond controversy, there is another side of her story that sometimes receives less attention. It's about how she uses her wealth and influence. Because while debates continued, she was also making choices about where her money and energy would go. And those choices tell us something important about what she values. When people talk about J.K. Rowling, they often mention the billions connected to the Harry Potter brand. The books. The movies. The theme parks. It's easy to focus only on the numbers. But what she chose to do with her money is another important part of her story. Remember when she was a single mother, counting coins, worried about paying bills? That memory stayed with her. She has said she never forgot how it felt to depend on support to survive. In 2005, she created a charity called Lumos. The name comes from a spell in Harry Potter that creates light. The charity focuses on helping children living in institutions, like orphanages, especially in Eastern Europe. Many of these children were separated from their families because of poverty or disability. Imagine a small child growing up without stable love. Without a permanent home. Studies show that children need close relationships to develop in a healthy way. Without that, they can struggle emotionally and mentally. Rowling visited some of these institutions herself. She saw the conditions. She spoke with staff. She met children. Picture her walking through a quiet building, simple rooms, metal beds lined up. That experience moved her deeply. Instead of just writing a check and walking away, she used her public voice to talk about the issue. She wanted people to understand that institutions are not the best place for children to grow. She also founded another organization, Volant Charitable Trust. Through this trust, she supports projects related to poverty, multiple sclerosis research, and other causes. Remember, her mother had multiple sclerosis. That connection is personal. Have you ever supported a cause because it touched your own life? When pain becomes motivation, generosity can feel very real. Over the years, she has donated large amounts of money. In fact, at one point, she was no longer listed as a billionaire because she had given so much away. That's unusual. Many wealthy people try to protect every dollar. She chose to share a significant part. But generosity is not only about money. It's also about time and attention. She has participated in campaigns. She has written about poverty in the UK. She has spoken about single parents. She understands that statistics are not just numbers. They represent real lives. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine going from financial stress to extreme wealth. That change can alter how you see the world. Some people distance themselves from their past. Others stay connected to it. In her case, the memory of hardship seems to guide many of her decisions. At the same time, she continues expanding the wizarding world. Theme parks like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter allow fans to walk through Diagon Alley or see Hogwarts Castle in real life. Children who once imagined these places can now step inside them. That must feel surreal. A story that began in a cafe now exists as a physical space people can visit. But even with these huge projects, she still describes herself first as a writer. Isn't that interesting? After all the money, all the fame, all the controversy, she returns to the simple act of writing sentences. And when we look at her life from the beginning until now, we start to see patterns. Struggle. Imagination. Risk. Criticism. Generosity. None of it is simple. None of it is one color. Her journey is full of light and shadow. And when we think about everything she has experienced, from rejection letters to red carpets, from depression to global fame, it naturally makes us wonder what we can learn from it in our own everyday lives. When we look at her life closely, it doesn't feel like a straight line. It feels more like a path with sharp turns. There were moments of deep sadness, moments of huge success, moments of public praise, and moments of strong criticism. That mix is real life. Think about the young mother sitting in a cafe, worried about money. She didn't know she would become one of the most famous writers in the world. She only knew she had a story to finish. That's important. She focused on the next page, not the final result. Have you ever stopped a dream because you couldn't see the whole path? Many people do. They wait for certainty. But certainty rarely comes at the beginning. Her story teaches something simple but powerful. Start with what you have. She didn't have a big office. She didn't have a powerful contact in publishing. She had paper, time during her baby's naps, and stubborn belief. Another lesson is about failure. She has spoken at Harvard University about failure being necessary. She said that failing stripped away the unimportant things. It forced her to focus on what truly mattered, writing and caring for her daughter. Let's think about that. When life removes your comfort, what remains? Sometimes what remains is your real strength. She also shows us the power of imagination. Harry Potter was not just a fun story. It was a world built with detail and care. She created rules for magic. She created history for the wizarding world. That kind of creativity takes patience. Creativity is not only talent. It's discipline. She wrote even when she was tired. Even when she felt sad. Even when she was rejected. That consistency matters. But there's another side to learn from too. Fame is not simple. It doesn't protect you from mistakes. It doesn't stop people from disagreeing with you. If anything, it makes disagreement louder. Have you noticed how we sometimes imagine success as a perfect shield? As if money and recognition will solve everything? Her life shows that success brings new challenges. Bigger visibility. Bigger responsibility. At the same time, her generosity reminds us that where you come from can shape where you give. She didn't forget the feeling of being at the bottom. She didn't erase that chapter. So what can you take from this? Maybe it's the courage to keep going after rejection. Maybe it's the decision to write your book, whatever that book means in your life. Maybe it's the understanding that failure does not define you. It prepares you. And maybe it's also a reminder that human beings are complex. A person can create something beautiful and still be imperfect. A person can inspire millions and still face criticism. We often want simple heroes. But real stories are more complicated. When you think about her journey from a delayed train to a global phenomenon, from government support to global stages, it invites one last quiet reflection about what truly matters when all the noise fades away. When all the headlines fade, when the book launches end, when the cameras turn away, what remains? For J.K. Rowling, what remains seems to be something very simple: a woman who loves stories. A woman who once imagined a lonely boy discovering he was special. Let's go back in your mind to that train ride. A delayed train. No pen. No paper. Just a quiet idea forming. She didn't know it would change her life. She didn't know it would change reading habits for millions of children. She only knew that the idea felt exciting. That's how many important things begin. Quietly. Her life shows us that circumstances can look very dark and still hold possibility. When she was living on government support, feeling like a failure, the first Harry Potter book was already alive in her mind. Success was not visible yet. It was hidden. Have you ever felt that your current situation defines your future? Her story suggests something different. Your present struggle might be building your future strength. But her journey also reminds us to stay thoughtful. Success does not make someone perfect. Fame does not remove complexity. We can appreciate the magic of a story while still thinking carefully about the person who created it. Life is not a simple fairy tale. It's layered. One of the strongest themes in Harry Potter is choice. Characters are often told that their choices matter more than their abilities. Think about that. Not your talent. Not your background. Your choices. She chose to keep writing after rejection. She chose to leave a difficult marriage. She chose to speak publicly about her opinions, even when it brought criticism. She chose to give away large parts of her wealth to causes she believed in. Each choice shaped her path. Now let's make this personal. What is your manuscript right now? It might not be a book. It might be a project. A new career. A healthier lifestyle. A skill you want to learn. Are you waiting for perfect conditions? Or can you start with what you have? Think about the image of her writing while her baby slept. Short moments. Small progress. But steady. You don't need a perfect day to move forward. You need small, consistent steps. And when fear whispers, "What if you fail?" remember that she did fail in many ways before she succeeded. She felt rejected. She felt lost. She felt uncertain. But those feelings did not stop her permanently. If you ever find yourself at a low point, try this small exercise. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I build from here?" That simple shift can change your direction. Her story is not just about magic schools or famous characters. It's about resilience. That word means the ability to recover after difficulty. To stand up again. So next time you see a Harry Potter book on a shelf, maybe you'll also see the image of a young mother in a cafe, writing between sips of cheap coffee, believing in a story no one else could see yet. And maybe you'll remember that powerful ideas often start in ordinary places, carried quietly by ordinary people who decide not to give up. If any of these ideas stayed in your mind, hold on to them. Sometimes one small thought is enough to light your own path forward.